This is the Why Am I a Mets Fan podcast. I'm Samantha Croston. That's Ashley Wenskowski, and we are joining all of you after the Mets have lost 11 straight games. It's remarkable. We're chasing history at this point. It hasn't happened to the Mets since 2004. Their highest losing streak ever is 17. We're on the way to some really bad things. All of that's worth discussing. But before all of that, more importantly than all of that, should we at least acknowledge that I have this little cherry nail art for my trip to Nashville?
That looks wonderful. I had no idea what you were just about to say, but that looks great.
And I have a phone case to match it.
Love that. So matchy. Very cute.
Anyway, back to the Mets.
The sky is falling in New York. We can't win a baseball game. We've sat here and talked to you, I don't even know, 4 times at this point since they last won a baseball game. Who's to say? We go to Chicago. We just fall on our face against the Cubs. I mean, Sunday, yesterday, they're like taking it to extra innings. MJ Melendez, latest scrap heap edition, is the only one that can even hit a baseball. Things are bad. This is turning into a national story. I mean, like, national outlets are posting things. Fox News is posting things as to whether or not it's a Mamdani curse, all right? Like, we won't even get into that, but things are escalating.
You know, that was actually brought up once or twice today in the newsroom. We're not here for conspiracy theories. Thank you, everybody, so much for being here. Also that. But the point is, it's not just like the Why Am I a Mets fan girlies are talking about this. We're talking about this national rounds. And I gotta be honest, of frankly all the losses, yesterday to me in some ways feels like the most gut-wrenching of all. I mean, from Conforto being the one to tie it up, to Devin Williams being the one to blow it. You know what I mean? To, you know, they get to extra innings and you just kind of see inevitably where it's headed. The decision making, honestly, by Carlos Mendoza, I am ready to start throwing that around. Memorial Day might have been too far as the timeline. I don't know what the hell is going on here, but when the only good thing I can say about today is that the Mets don't play baseball.
Thank God.
Like, that's honestly it.
We all need a breather.
And when they return tomorrow, Tuesday, something really legitimately different is going to have to change. How do you exactly do that on a baseball team? I'm not really sure, because the people you have are the people you have. But whether it's personnel, whether it's really getting shifty with something, whether it's chaining up something in the lineup, in the roster, I don't know what needs to happen. But like, you just have to try and throw something at the wall at this point and see if it sticks, so that you don't continuously become a national story because you're losing that much.
Let's be really honest about something. And this is just if you are a longtime Mets fan and you saw Michael Conforto strolling to the plate in that situation, longtime former Met, yesterday against the Cubs on Sunday, you just knew that was going to be the kiss of death, because it's just Groundhog Day, right? Like, of course that's going to happen.
There's only one way that story ends if you're a Mets fan. And honestly, Devin Williams, from the moment he walked out there, looked like he was feeling the pressure of a 10-game losing streak.
Yeah.
Honestly, I felt like he didn't have it from the moment he walked out there. But again, listen, for it to be tied up, okay, 1-1, you're going to extras, it happens. It's just the fact that by the time they get around to extra innings, you really have no real feel that they're going to be able to come back, that they're going to be able to win, that the pitching is going to do a good enough job. Honestly, the Mets don't hit at all. But even if they did, like even if they were hitting the way they did on opening day against the Pirates, I still don't think that I would feel good about the pitching. I think we'd be here talking about the Mets have somewhat of a pitching problem here. We just can't even talk about that because it's just so much bigger than that now.
Well, the pitching problem, all right, I guess we'll start with the pitching and we'll get to the hitting in a moment. The pitching problem, now you are staring at a situation where, and we've been over it, like what we tried to get out of these guys. We really added one starter after a year that everything fell on the pitching and you didn't make the playoffs down the stretch because of the pitching. Then you added Freddie Peralta, who has been really nothing to write home about. He's been serviceable, which is more than you can say for some of the other guys, but nothing to write home about. Now you have a situation where they just skipped over David Peterson this weekend because they were so not trusting of Peterson to make a start because he's been so bad that they said, we're going to try Tobias Myers instead. No offense to Tobias Myers. Not good if your name's David Peterson. Then you have the situation where Kodai Senga is also horrible. You are staring at 2 rotation spots here in Senga and Peterson. Mendoza hasn't even said yet if Senga's going to make his next start. Like, we're down to 3 already? And we talked about there's pitching depth, right, in the minors. Jonah Tong, I'm going to say it, has not looked good so far in Syracuse. Christian Scott is just getting up to speed. There's other guys who can make starts for you and go out there and take the ball. But on April 20th, if you're sitting here and 2 of your 5 opening day starters are unserviceable, Sean Manaea is toiling away in the bullpen, what are we doing?
It's April. Like, remember 2 weeks ago, we're here and you're like, well, you just can't judge a whole season by April. If this is the way the rest of the season is going to look, I cannot watch 120 plus baseball games of this. Like, I'm not going to sit through all this. I actually am, but only because I want to shit talk them. I'm going to hate watch at that point.
Right.
I used to want to cheer for something. I used to feel hope in my heart, Ashley.
Right.
It's getting to a place where, like, yes, it's interesting and it's funny and the losing streak, but like, even once they snap this, they're in a horrific hole now.
Well, that's the thing. You can sit here and say, and maybe, hopefully, God willing, for our sanity, we'll sit here in a couple months and we'll look back on this little episode and we'll say, man, remember that? Rock bottom, nobody in the ballpark. But as Jeff Passan pointed out to us, the hole that they have now dug themselves, okay, this pretty little worst start to the season in essentially Mets history, 4 teams in Major League Baseball history have lost 10 or more games in a row and made the playoffs. The last one was the Guardians just last year. Only one of those teams had a skid in April and still made the postseason, which was like in 1951. You get the idea. Where we're headed, yes, it's April 20th, but teams that have these sorts of streaks in April don't tend to do so well. And you know what? I think it's high time we talk about the hitting, because if there's any area to me, don't get me wrong, the pitching there's honestly more question marks than answers in that starting rotation. Mm-hmm. But the hitting is what sticks out to me as this could really be this season-long thing that plagues this team. I'm sorry, it's really not so fluky to lose, 11 games in a row at this point and not be able to hit and not be able to drive in runners in scoring position and not be able to string together contact, right? Like, that's not a fluke for 2 straight weeks at this point.
No, and it's not like it's one person at this point who's having a slow start. Top to bottom, the lineup is just not performing well, which is so interesting because I feel like you probably feel this way every year if you're a Mets fan, at least for a small period of time. But I just can't figure this team out. Like, do you remember opening day?
I do. They scored, 10 runs?
It's like we're talking about, we're like, you know what? This is the science experiment that wins the fair, you know?
Yeah.
That wins the high school fair. Like, Alvarez is hitting bombs. Carson Bench is getting his first home run. Everybody is eating. Stars are performing in the ways they normally do. Like, was that just a one-off? Like, I literally can't think of any other time other than like that one day that I felt happy.
To be completely and completely clear, this is not okay, Juan Soto's returning next homestand, hopefully this week. This is not a situation where, Juan Soto's going to be back, so we might be okay. Now, if that was the case, I'd be utterly delighted. But frankly, I don't see it going this way. You have a Lindor problem. You have a Bo Bichette problem, which I've said multiple times. I expect those guys to get going at some point, but we're just looking around the room at this point. And beyond the top of the lineup, you, once again, I will eat my words from opening day that sounded so hopeful, have a 6 through 9 problem. We have to have real conversations about the future of Brett Baty and Mark Vientos on this team, because Brett Baty, you can look at it statistically, this is not me jumping to conclusions, is damn near the worst hitter in Major League Baseball through the first 3 weeks of the season.
No, it's true.
I'm sorry, time is up. This is my little tiny gold watch, very cute, antique.
Yeah, really is.
Time is up. Time is on Brett Baty and Mark Vientos. I am done. I still think Vientos is a higher upside. He can hit for power sometimes. We saw him hit a home run just a couple of games ago. But these cannot be, listen, Brett Baty and Mark Vientos could have major league careers. They could go on and be utility guys and just like bop around the league. And in 10 years, we could still see him places. They're serviceable, but they're not everyday pieces to your lineup that you're relying on in clutch situations. And the fact that we are on, honestly, like year 3 pretty much of waiting for those 2 to produce, I'm done waiting. Time is up.
There's something about the time is up on the little gold adorable antique watch. Like,
oh,
you're so scary.
Hey, no, guys, so scary.
It's literally so cute, so pretty. Yeah, I agree. I think it's funny because I feel like, for the longest time, I was the Brett Baty defender.
Yeah, we had opposite roles in that situation.
As is the case from time to time. And honestly, in my heart of hearts, when I think about him and I think about Mark Vientos, I still think that out of the two of them, Brett Beatty is the guy who has more upside, partially because I think he's a little bit of a better athlete, partially because I think day to day he's a little bit of a better defender. I do think that he could be a more consistent hitter, although I think that Vientos is more of a hit for power kind of guy. But the point is that if he's not consistent and if he, his first year, I felt like you would see him getting behind on counts a lot. He'd be in a lot of 0-2 counts, which is, I think, okay, in your first few starts in the big leagues and you're trying to prove something or impress somebody, so you start swinging. But that's kind of Brett Beatty's issue, I think, is that when his back's up against the wall and he starts to get into a slump, he just swings. Like, that is his solution to that problem. He's like, I'm going to swing away. I'm going to try and take a hack at this ball. Every so often it works. It's not as consistent as it needs to be if he's going to be somebody who, like you said, is in your everyday lineup. And I think it's funny because there have been some guys on the Mets who have had such a short leash. I don't know why Brett Beatty's has been so long. I think they were really hoping for him to be an everyday player. Everybody kind of thought and could see, this is the Mets' vision here. If it's not working, it's not working, though.
Beatty and Vientos can, like I said, have career, they can be the Michael Confortos of the world and go on to stay in baseball for many years. But we cannot be trotting them out there as everyday pieces that are relied on in New York City. I mean, first of all, somebody explain to me why Ronnie Mauricio is still toiling away here in good old Syracuse, New York, when he possibly, at this point, right, like you said it at the top of the show, throw darts at the board. Ronnie Mauricio showed a little power, had a walk-off hit when they first called him up. I'm not saying that Ronnie Mauricio is the answer by any way, shape, or form, but he still has some upside there. You don't know what you have in him in the way that you do with some of the other guys in the lineup. Why on earth is Mauricio not up? Now, MJ Melendez has been hitting well, as we touched on, but you gotta throw something at the wall here, because in terms of all your young guys, your baby Mets, the Beatty, the Vientos, the Alvarez, who's panned out? Like, that's just a genuine question. Who has panned out here? And I'm going to say it too, David Stearns, boy genius that he thinks he is, and some others. What exactly was the plan at first base this year? Because that's an area that I need to get off my chest for a minute. They went into this season, they signed Jorge Polanco to a 2-year, $40 million deal to play first base. Although, even at the time, many people knew that as Polanco's sort of aging, he was going to DH a lot. Okay, great. Jorge Polanco played 2 games at first base. 2. And then that experiment was shortly thereover. Then he switched to DHing. Now he's on the IL because he has 2 issues, not just one. He's on the IL for a wrist thing, and he had a leg problem. What was the plan when you now have Brett Beatty playing first base and you're rotating Vientos through there? I am not going to make excuses for these guys because, like I said my patience is up with both Beatty and Vientos. But are they first basemen? Like, you're playing musical chairs with these guys night in and night out, and where you're playing in the field, and then you're sitting here wondering, why can't they find any consistency? Gee, I don't know.
Well, that's also the problem. It's easy for us, I think, now to just say, well, let's throw something at the wall and see if anything sticks. Because the point is, it couldn't be any worse than it is right now, right?
We're at rock bottom.
We're at rock bottom. So at this point, you may as well just try anything. Like, you honestly could try anything just to try it because it's not going to get worse than it is right now. But you also can't be trying things so often and switching things up so often that everybody is consistently playing out of position and you're just hoping that something's going to work. It's April baseball, but the point is, the season's here. We are underway, y'all. It's too late, I think, to be deciding the answers to some of your really good questions here, Like you mentioned, who hasn't disappointed? I mean, honestly, I actually like what Robert has done. He's somebody who I think, wow, that I always thought. I was like, that could be, the make or break guy here. Literally, beyond him, I just look at even some of these batting averages, just starting from the top with, Bo Bichette, 217, Lindor, 205, Semien, 234, Beatty, 200. It's really, really bad. It's just terrible.
Not to mention, are we ready to admit that Carson Bench needs more time in Syracuse? Listen, I like the guy. He hasn't honestly been as bad as some of the others.
143.
143. He's actually been worse. To have him leading off your lineup, like Mendoza shook things up with the lineup. I get it. You got to try something. You got to shake up. To have Carson Bench be the guy getting the most at bats in this lineup, Carson Bench needs to come down to freaking Syracuse and see more competitive, almost major league caliber pitching, because he's not there yet. And honestly, it's not so shocking that he's not there yet when he spent about 30 seconds in Syracuse last year and pretty much came up and started this season on the heels of a year in Double-A. Like, that's not exactly rocket science to think he might need more time to adjust to the pitching. I'm gonna calm down. I also saw a very interesting stat. I think you'll find this intriguing. I heard it on one of the SNY broadcasts this weekend. I believe it was Saturday, about how I said Juan Soto is not your end-all be-all, and to be clear, he is not. But I found this to be very interesting. They were saying, they had a statistic, and I don't remember the number, on how, you're talking about plate discipline with Brett Beatty, on how in Soto's absence, it was like 40 or 50% worse, like chase rates. Like, they're swinging and missing at pitches, the plate discipline isn't there, and in Soto's absence, that's been completely amplified. And I just found that to be interesting because we know Soto's plate discipline, we know he loves to walk, he's one of the best hitters at that in baseball. So I found that to be interesting that having him play, having him be in the lineup actually affects the other hitters that way. Everybody talks about Juan Soto's leadership. I don't want to get into all that, but I am just saying, intriguing, right?
Yeah, very intriguing. Very intriguing. I mean, especially because, like you said, I think that's what ends up hurting people's feelings here. The people who are really hardcore fans and are watching every day, is it seems like on some days the Mets just come out there and they're lifeless. On other days when they're really, you can tell at least they're trying to hype each other up and pour their heart and soul into it, it's still not producing more than like 2 runs. Like, are these hitters really as bad as they've shown through the first however many games? Or is this sample size not really indicative of the actual potential and talent on this roster?
Let's discuss. I have a 2-part answer to that because you said like the lifeless, the coming out there flat. We need to discuss the Carlos Mendoza elephant in the room and where the blame exactly falls for him. There has been a whole lot of opinions because when you lose 11 straight, it's 11, right? I've lost
11.
track. 11 straight baseball games in New York. There's going to be all eyes turned to the manager. That's just how that works. I mean, Terry Collins is on SNY talking about what Mendoza needs to do. Like, there are talking heads in and out of the woodwork about Mendoza. Mets Twitter had a theory that they are going to fire Mendoza today, Monday, because it's an off day. Obviously, that hasn't happened yet. We will happily jump back on this podcast if that occurs.
Yeah, you'll see another episode.
And you'll see us later if that happens. Hasn't happened to 3:30 at this point. The point being, I do allocate a large amount of blame to Carlos Mendoza because there is something that is true here, and it's that this team has fallen into caverns, deep, dark holes numerous times now. We have this time, we have everything that happened at the second half of last year, and very obviously, Mendoza's a great guy. He obviously has a lot of good attributes as manager, but he doesn't possess whatever it takes to get them out of a losing streak. We saw that last year. We see it with the energy. I don't know what he needs to do in that clubhouse, but evidently something needs to be done, and it's not hitting Carson Bench leadoff in the lineup. So there's that. However, I circle back around to what I said on our last episode, which I think was a Zoom episode at the end of last week when they got swept by the Dodgers. Hello to all of our Dodgers fans. Thanks for listening to our misery. When are we going to start talking about the David Stearns problem? Because to me, that's actually the root of the issue. Yes, Carlos Mendoza's the motivator. He's out there on the front lines. And honestly, he'll probably end up being the one taking the fall for it.
Definitely.
But probably have a little bit of a longer leash because David Stearns hired him. But when do we start talking about David Stearns' roster construction? Because we've sat here, we've talked about the crafty, the creativity. Oh, he gets creative. I'm done. I've had enough. You blew up the core this offseason for this greater vision that you had of a defensive team, a team that hits to contact, a team that has a deep lineup, and that has so far completely failed. When are we going to start talking about David Stearns and his lack of success? Because 2024, as I've said many times, the year they went to the NLCS, he largely inherited that team. So 2025 and the first month of 2026, David Stearns' New York Mets teams have not gone so well.
Well, I actually am so glad that you brought that up because hard agree. I think that, and it's funny because you're right to say that the first thing that will happen is Mendoza will get fired and they'll bring in somebody new, and that could fix it.
Do you think Mendoza should get fired right now?
probably it's a little early for me.
I agree.
I'd like to see him get a little bit more of an opportunity here, just because after all, it literally is April.
But the clock's ticking.
And let's see how long the losing streak lasts, right? At some point, they might not have a choice. At least if they did something like that, you could actually see some sort of a change or a shakeup in season right now. It would feel like action that's being taken immediately to fix this. But to your point, it kind of feels like Mendoza was put a little bit in a hole that he didn't really actually dig, and now he's trying to crawl his way out of, you know? Like, to your point, they blew up the core, and I'm not going to sit here and say that there's no reason why they did that, because we're the same people who, were sitting here at the end of last season like, something drastic needs to change here. And something drastic did change, but it was a high risk, high reward change. And right now, I think we're seeing the high risk portion of that.
And we can be honest about something. With what happened last year, I'm not really sure David Stearns was in a position to put himself and Carlos Mendoza in a high risk situation. I mean, of course, in Mets land, when it rains, it pours, right? Like, hindsight's 2020. Brandon Nimmo's hitting like 325 for the Rangers, having a great start to the year. Alonso is what he is. I was never in love with the idea of giving Alonso a long-term deal, but the players and their outlook aside, you just start to question. Stearns kind of sits up on his soapbox and he's like, we're not signing anyone to long-term deals. We're doing it this way. We're prioritizing defense, but everybody's playing out of position. We need pitchers. I didn't sign any. It's kind of like, for me, the messaging and what he's saying isn't really matching up with what's going on. You have this broader vision. You don't want to sign anyone to long-term deals. All right, that's fine. But then everybody you can get in here on short-term deals with opt-outs kind of sucks. So where does that leave us?
And I actually feel like we talked about this a couple of times throughout the course of the past little under 2 years, 21 months, whenever this podcast first started. It always seemed like David Stearns had like this weird obsession with money, like this weird obsession with getting the best deal. You know what I mean?
It stems from Milwaukee. We can be honest about something.
He's the kind of person who refuses to buy something full price. He's waiting until he sees it on the Marshall's rack. Let me be clear. I am also that person. Like, I really do get it, and I love a good steal. Marshall's has a lot of great Calvin Klein stuff that you otherwise would not find for that price.
Correct.
But at times, you buy that dress, and it turns out there's a rip in it.
You can't shop at the TJ Maxx when you live in Manhattan in a penthouse like David Stearns does.
That's the problem. Like, the mentality and the mindset that he has doesn't align with the money that is available to him.
Correct.
That's what I don't get. Not to mention, it's not even his money. Why do you care if Uncle Stevie wants to spend it? Like, I get it. He's obviously, the person who has to control all of this for the Mets. I get it that he doesn't want to make bad deals. But, like, this guy is up at night having nightmares about being fleeced. Like, you got to, at some point, I think he should have just at least committed to one or two, like you said, big splashes. Like, why did they come in last when it came to guys like Tucker? And, like, again, I think that guy's, I don't know, he strikes me as a little bit of an asshole. I'm not saying he would have been the exact right person.
I'm going to say it. I forgot the Dodgers signed Kyle Tucker because he hasn't been that impactful.
Yeah, it's not to say that just because he, was somebody who seemed splashy in the offseason means he would have been the right person. But it does seem like this time around, the Mets lost out this offseason on some of the biggest possible players that they could have gotten. And I'm not sure why Steve Cohen was just saying, let me know when you see the smoke, because here I am waiting.
I haven't seen the smoke
Not yet.
Steve. I continue to wait for the smoke. No, I agree with you. And to be honest, we're talking about money, and I hate his philosophy with money, with a lot of things, but it's not even all about the money. It's just this idea and this philosophy that you're moneyballing and you're nickel and dime. Just put guys in a position to succeed. Why is everybody playing out of position, for instance? Forget about money. I don't care who you brought in. Maybe bring in guys who are experienced and who haven't played. I mean, we said the stat at one of our earlier shows in the offseason. The Mets went into this year with the 4 infield starting positions, like first base, second base, third base, shortstop. They had like a grand total of 2 games of experience at the corners. Like, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. David Stearns is trying to reinvent the wheel, and he didn't have to do that with the resources that he has allocated to him. And beyond that, and I'm going to bring up something that you might feel is a little bit off the wall. I actually think he now has a bigger problem on his hands. Okay. Because, of course, obviously he does, right? If it's the second season of losing, if the Mets are horrific this year, there's going to be big-time changes. They're going to fire Mendoza. It's going to be anarchy in Queens, okay? But beyond that, where he really has a problem now is that you blew up the core. You shook up the coaching staff. You did kind of everything you had to do this offseason going into this year to make changes. And now it's still not working. And on top of that, fans don't really care about any of these guys. Let's be honest about something. Last year when the wheels fell off the bus, fans still had a higher stock and a higher interest in that team because these are beloved Mets. They've played here for 8, 10 years. Pete Alonso, Nimmo, Jeff McNeil for some people.
For some.
For some, not me. Longtime guys, right, that fans are attached to. There's an emotional connection. Well, David Stearns took a page out of the college athletics book where nobody has an emotional connection to anybody anymore because of the transfer portal. And he brought in all these guys that honestly fans don't really give a damn about. Now, I'm not saying you need to construct your roster around that. That's obviously ridiculous. But when things go awry, as they are right now, people don't have a reason to give Bo Bichette a longer leash because they don't know Bo Bichette. Marcus Semien and Jorge Polanco, I don't know, they seem nice. They just got here, but they kind of fucking suck at the plate. So why would I? Do you understand what I'm getting at here? Like, he lost the attachment that fans had to these players. Now they have even less of a reason to come out to the ballpark.
Which I get. And listen, it's funny because the Mets fan base is so psychotic, is so used to being hurt, is so insane.
Traumatized and for good reason.
Like, you're really probably not going to drive away Mets fans, or it would take a lot, is my point. I would think they'll still come out and hate watch just because they love the Mets and the team so much. But you're absolutely right. I mean, I would even say for me personally, I'm not... Like, the first time I'm, like, looking at some of these guys, I'm, like, having to, like, look down at my list. Now, who the hell is this again? Like, exactly who do we have going on here? You're, like, trying to recognize the faces. Now, okay, whatever. You watch a couple games, you understand, you see the lineup, you know who everybody is. But to your point, when you think about guys like Alonso, you think about guys like Nimmo, it was, like, those were the guys of our generation. That's who we, like, grew up watching.
Yeah.
And for anybody, I think, who's our age, yeah, of course you're going to all of a sudden be like, who exactly are these guys?
Edwin Diaz among that group as well.
100%. I could totally see where you think that fans would just sort of feel like I'm out or just feel a little bit of apathy towards the whole situation, which, as Ashley and I always say, is a bad thing. You'd rather fans be upset, pissed off, hating you than not feeling anything for you, because that's when you're really in a big hole.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I think the broader takeaway here is we're sitting here, it's Monday, April 20. I mean, nothing's happened yet. I think something sizable needs to shift. To be honest, I don't really know what that is when I'm sitting here saying don't fire Carlos Mendoza just yet. Jolly Olive pointed out, and I knew the upcoming schedule, but the good news, if there's one glimmer of hope, it's that they have a 9-game stretch here, actually longer than that, against some pretty abysmal competition, although we're not really in a space to call anybody else abysmal, and I'm aware of that. They come home this homestand. They host the Twins, Rockies, and Nationals, 9 games. And then they go out on the road out west again for the 3rd time this season to play the Angels, Rockies, and Arizona Diamondbacks. So for the next really like 2-3 weeks, the competition gets a little easier. You're not having to play the Dodgers, and possibly they can turn some things around. But what a joke. Jolly Olive's tweet was saying, essentially on March 23rd, he was like, the Mets should win all of these games. Now we're just hoping and praying. And FanDuel Sportsbook has a tab, when are the Mets going to win their next game at all? Like, that, we're at the bottom.
That's insane. Maybe we're going to end up betting today. I don't know what else to say other than something really big has to change. Like you said, sometimes even one off day, I think maybe goes a long way. Maybe they're sick of having to trot it out there after every single game, go look New York media in the face and essentially just say the same thing.
Yeah.
But I think something needs to change here. And frankly, if it's not Mendoza, I'm not sure exactly what else it's going to be. So we're headed in that direction. But let's give Mendoza a little bit more time to try and figure this thing out. And hopefully against some weaker competition, they can at least get back into the game here. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Snap the streak and then pile on a couple of wins, and we'll see where that leads.
Hopefully we are talking to you next week and the Mets have won a game, maybe, or like 3 would be nice.
Just, again, to point it out, as far as the actual Mets, their longest losing streak ever was 17. So we are also on the lookout for that, just to make sure that doesn't happen.
On
and if
the
it
charge
does,
to make history.
That would be insane. Thank you guys so much for joining us. As always, that's Ashley Wenskowski. I'm Samantha Cross, and we'll see you back here when the next big thing happens. Thanks for joining us.